Hello, and thank you for joining me with this interview. And I'm joined by Mons Olson.
Thank you. Hello.
And he's here to ask my burning questions about scrolls. Mainly the future of scrolls, I think.
Yes. I suppose.
And
Should that...
I think we'll open up with the first question, which is on the subject of the challenges. Because they have been added recently, and they add a whole new dynamic to the game. And I've been dreaming up crazy ideas, and I was wondering if you had any ideas of releasing a tool to let players create their own challenges.
Well, I'm not sure if we'll actually make such a tool to create your own challenges that you can get rewards from, because I think that might be abusable.
Yeah.
But I would love to add support for more ridiculous matches, so a WTF mode essentially.
Okay.
So letting players set some options, the idle health, perhaps give you starting units or all units relentless or whatever, and then get the game started and get some crazy one-on-ones going. So that would be
okay.
cool.
That sounds really cool. Do you think there'd be a sharing system so we can send that to other people, maybe?
Well, I'm not actually sure. This is not something that is.
Yeah.
That we have a current plan for, but I would love to see a mode like that. I think most likely you'd just be able to set up the configuration yourself when you start the match, and it'll probably remember the last one you played, I guess.
Okay, that's really cool. I really like that idea, that WTF mode.
Yeah, it's worked well for other games. I think it's usually a bit of fun. So.
Yeah, certainly agree that you shouldn't give rewards for it. Win by... No, if you lose on turn 1, you win 300 gold.
Well, I'm not sure that would be such a fun rule to include in the list of possible rules. In any case, but
yeah. Lose by turn 1. Speaking of challenges, that Gravelock one. That's the one I've had the most trouble with, where they start off with like...
With the elders?
Yes. That one's the one
I think that is one of the hardest ones. I don't think I've actually played it and completed it, but I haven't really tried a lot.
I find that if you don't do anything, you can lose that on turn 2.
Turn 2?
Yeah, I think so. Because they all move, so they're all on 3 lanes, and then they attack, and
yes.
Turn 2. You're basically dead on turn 2.
I take that back. I did try that a lot. I think it has been nerfed slightly since.
Good.
I hope, because it was completely impossible then. Jon challenged me to complete it, said he'd buy me lunch if I did. I did not.
I'll move on to the next question then.
All right.
At the moment, Scrolls is a highly balanced, highly competitive trading card game, and it is only in alpha. With the beta release and the full release, how far do you see Scrolls going in a competitive scene, like sponsored tournaments, MLG stuff like StarCraft and LoL are at the moment?
Well, that's certainly difficult to predict. I mean, it depends on how gamers perceive the game. I do think it could work very well in a competitive scene. The competitive scene is one of the areas where traditional collectible card games and trading card games are strong. Mm-hmm. And I think Scrolls could draw on that. And some of those players could also be interested in playing it competitively. With that said, though, I know there's a lot of players who don't want to play competitively. So it's kind of important for us to have both cater to both groups, I suppose.
Yeah.
So quick matches and ranked matches are a first step in, having a little bit of a casual game mode that is accessible in the form of quick matches, and the ranked matches are obviously slightly more competitive. And we'd love to support this in other ways in the future, so drafts or tournaments. But exactly what form that will take, I'm not sure.
Okay, I do like the idea of it getting to that higher level.
Absolutely.
Imagine seeing Scrolls at an MLG. My dream to one day cast that match.
Well, it would be cool, absolutely. I would love to see some seriously hardcore gamers play on a competitive level in a live tournament. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I feel like keeping it casual is something StarCraft didn't really do. It's difficult to get into a casual StarCraft 2 match.
I did play StarCraft 2 for a while, and I felt like it was slightly too hardcore for me. After a while, I just couldn't do it.
I'd play it like non-stop for a week, and then I'd take a break, and I'm too afraid to go back to it after that.
Yeah, pretty much.
So currently, with the release of new scrolls into the alpha, they are released in a small group of about 10 every couple of months or so. And it doesn't seem like they're too structured. It's more you build some stuff and you think, this is ready to send out, we'll send it out. Do you see that changing to become more structured and set-like with the main releases, or will it remain the same?
Well, I'm hoping it'll change a little bit. So what we would like to do, I think, is do this in two ways. So we'd like to release a few scrolls, I don't know, every week or every fortnight or so, maybe one or two scrolls, to keep providing new content, and then also save up a couple of scrolls for somewhat larger releases. The first one, like that, obviously being Decay.
Yeah.
So we'd like to combine those, releasing something that is more similar to a full set, but also releasing cards a few at a time.
Okay. I do like that idea. I like the idea of, like, I can imagine myself thinking, it's Friday, that's new scroll day.
That would be
Dancing
fantastic.
towards my computer.
I definitely think we should aim for that. But
even if there's only two, it's something new.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know if that would ever happen, but in my mind I had an idea of just, like, having a couple of hours in a day where you just update it to do random stuff, like, Quake costs 2! Just see what happens.
that would be weird. There's probably something... I mean, we probably need to set up a test server at some point to be able to do balance testing with a larger group, probably about the size of the alpha testers currently, or anyone who wants to play in the test server, but with certain restrictions, certain times, I don't know.
Yeah.
So we'll probably need to set up something like that in order to get a sanity check on balance before we release scrolls.
Yeah.
And if we do that, that could be an arena for things like that, I guess. But I haven't really thought this through, so I'm not sure if that would be a good idea or not.
I think it could be interesting.
It could be.
Give everyone a chance to try out something new every now and then.
Yeah.
But if you do release new scrolls every week, then that might satisfy everyone.
Yeah, well, it's something worth aiming for, at least. I'm not sure what the exact details will be. I suppose the beta will tell.
Yeah. Excited for beta. So excited. Can you please release it on a weekend? Because then I can stream it.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
We know that scrolls will have real money purchasing or microtransactions at some point. What are the plans for how they will be added? Like, for example, will it be a booster to your gold income, or will they be straight purchases?
We'll probably have a secondary currency that you can buy with real money that is not gold, and that you can use to buy stuff in the store.
Okay.
Because if you could buy gold with real money, you'd be able to sort of pay to win, which is something we're trying to avoid. I mean, there are two groups. There are those that have more time and less money, and less time and more money. Did I say the same thing twice? I'm not sure. Okay.
I think I get what you mean.
So we want to make the game for both of those groups. I mean, we're even slightly divided in the office. Some of us prefer paying a small amount over actually spending time grinding for in-game money, while others prefer playing their way to a good day. With that said, I think we should limit how much you're able to pay for scrolls. So that will sort of it'll probably be limited in some way or other, meaning you can if you play enough, if you spend enough time playing it, you will have a fair chance. So I guess we'd like to sell some scrolls perhaps, and also cosmetic items, of course.
Yay. Oh, you're not going to make me buy the owl avatar, are you? I will.
The owl avatar, yes. the owl avatar will cost $1,000.
Oh, I'm going to start saving now.
There may or may not be owl things in progress for scrolls.
That shouldn't make me excited, because that may not.
Exactly.
Sorry, I completely went off topic, but so what you're saying is more of you currently have the Just For You section in the store, which updates every week.
Yes.
Would it be like that, where you can only buy stuff in that section once with real money?
The Just For You things, you can already only buy once, and then it will say sold out until next week. So that is something that we could sell for the secondary in-game currency, which you would buy with real money.
Yeah.
But you would also be able to buy them using gold. While we don't want to provide free access to buy any number of scrolls you want. So pre-constructed decks might also be something that you could buy using real money or gold.
Okay. So what's your opinion on the gold booster system then? So like maybe a 20% boost for all your gold income for a week or so.
Okay, so you'd buy having to use less time, is that it?
Yeah.
Essentially. That's an interesting idea. I can't really say whether I like it or not off the top of my head. I mean, it serves a valid purpose in that it will give players who have less time the chance to compete. But it sounds a little bit boring, I suppose. Buying the ability to gain gold faster. I don't know.
Yeah. That's something I see a lot in free-to-play games, and it's interesting you describe it as boring.
Well,
I like it.
I don't know. It's also difficult because there aren't necessarily any obvious comparisons that we can make to other games that has an economy that looks like what we want to do.
Of course.
The closest thing are traditional card games, physical products, and those are they have the entire physical layer on top of it, so that makes it different as well.
Okay, I think Tim Fox put a question in about that later, but I think we should skip off of business stuff now.
Okay.
And get back into the game with the talents, like the Relentless is a talent, and they seem to have become exclusive to factions. Like Haste seems to be a growth-focused faction, and Ranged is an energy-focused talent, not faction. Were those? I mean, there is some cross, but it seems to be focused. Was this an intentional divide with these talents?
Well, we talents or passive abilities, as we use internally as the name for them.
Okay.
They can be split among all resources in some cases. I think Relentless is pretty well represented in most resources. I know Growth has 2 units. Order has 2 as well, I think. And Energy 2 as well.
I think Energy only has 1.
Well, they have the Raider and the Iron Ogre.
Okay.
Other passive abilities are shared between a few, like Poison,
ranged. Oh yeah.
which is primarily shared between Growth and Decay.
Mm-hmm.
So Decay will have Poison abilities as well. Or they can be almost unique to a resource. So
Haste.
Haste is a good example of that.
Okay.
We want Growth to be an aggressive color, so the passive ability Haste fits that theme and helps strengthen that identity. So there aren't really strict rules to how we do this, but we're continuously working towards trying to give each resource a clear identity, and passive abilities, can be a piece of that puzzle.
Like Spiky is a defensive thing, and Order is a defensive
Yeah,
color.
I suppose so. Yeah. So
And Ranged is a controlling one. Like Energy,
yes,
I guess.
though I think in the case of Ranged and Energy, we would like to add a few more melee units to Energy. They're a bit too heavy on range currently, but that's something that we will keep working on.
I find when I play games with Energy, I tend to fill up the board. My opponent can't do anything, but I'm taking forever to actually kill them. Because I've got so many things that are actually dealing hits, I'm just controlling everything.
Yeah.
I think that might just be the way I play it, though.
Well, yeah. And you can clearly tell that there's a lot of ranged in Energy. So if you're facing an Order deck with Spiky, that Spiky will pretty much not affect you with an Energy deck.
Yeah.
Because they don't only have the range, they have 3 lobbers as well, which also use it.
True. Yeah, that is true. So Decay. Yay! That's currently set to be released after beta releases. So, beta will come out, there will be some time, then Decay will come out. I'm making that clear, because that's something that gets asked quite a bit. And I was wondering, what impact do you think this will have on the community, and are there any teasers of Decay that you can give us?
I definitely think Decay will upset and confuse the metagame, at least for a short while after it is released. I mean, it will contain a number of scrolls that is at least roughly equal to the number of scrolls we have in the other resources right now. And that obviously means that the game will change a little bit if you look at it at a meta level.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible we'll have to rebalance Decay even slightly after we release it, though we'll be aiming, of course, to have it reasonably balanced.
Of course.
And as for teasers, I've mentioned earlier that there are no memorials that give the Decay resource. So there won't be new memorials in the other colors that give Decay. There won't be memorials in Decay either, giving other resources. So we're planning to support multi-resource Decay decks using other types of scrolls.
Oh.
And I can also say we've actively tried to avoid constricting types of mechanics that are common in resources that have other similarities to Decay, because they're not fun to face.
Okay.
Actually, my doorbell just rang. Sorry.
Okay.
Can I pause here for a second? I'll be right back.
Yep.
So sorry about that.
That's okay.
We're building balconies in my apartment building, and they wanted to discuss that. I tried to keep it as short as possible.
So what is your opinion on balconies?
I do like balconies. I don't think they should be in Energy. We should move them to Decay.
That was a poorly timed sip.
Sorry.
I was not expecting that.
Alright, I have no idea where I was. I was talking about Decay. Oh, yes.
You were talking about constriction.
Yes. So there are, like, an example of a mechanic that is constricting, that is not fun to face as an opponent, is being forced to discard cards or scrolls, in our case. So that is something we won't be introducing with Decay, at least for the time being.
Okay, that's interesting.
So and also, making the opponents get less resources is a similar thing. That is,
Yeah.
that is not something that we want to add at this point.
Okay. So no resource hate and no hand hate.
Not for the time being, in any case.
What about masochism style decks with damage to your own idols for things?
I wrote something about that in in the email you sent earlier. The Unleash Inner Power used to actually be a scroll that damaged your own idol, or even sacrificed your own idol, giving a damage buff or something along those lines.
Wow.
This was in the planning stages. It was never implemented that way.
Okay.
That is definitely a decay that would suit... Sorry, a mechanic that would suit Decay better. There's definitely stuff that's slightly masochistic in Decay. So units that damage themselves, for example.
Okay. Cool. So kind of like the Wildling.
Not quite, but yes, in a sense, I suppose. There's no current concept of sacrificing or damaging your own idols that I can think of, but I mean it's not impossible that we'll add that at some point. That type of mechanic, I suppose, is shared a little bit between Decay and Order. So Order has decimation, also heritage, telling your unit, basically the general giving an order saying you're going to stand here and die for me, and I will get a benefit from that. So Order has that a little bit, though Decay, I suppose, will have it even more.
I like that. I like that there's that. I was thinking, like, I can see a synergy between energy and decay with the Gravelocks and growth and decay because of the poison, but I'm like, well, it fits with Order. It turns out it's evil.
It is that a little bit. Order has both sides. It's both good and evil, depending on.
Like Lord Ungstrom.
Attention
to the flavor text.
Yes. He might. Is he evil? I can't remember.
He's the one who said, he's the guy for Powerbound.
Oh, yeah.
He says, I will take your essence when you no longer need it.
So he's probably at least... Well, he might just be practical. He might be a bit evil.
Okay. I think that's enough teasing things from you. At Minecon last year, you talked about adding scrolls as one way to balance the game.
Mm-hmm.
So what other ways do you have to balance the game?
Well, there is, of course, the possibility of buffing or even nerfing existing scrolls.
Do you have a preference? Would you rather nerf over buff?
No, we would absolutely rather buff scrolls.
Okay.
I mean, we'd like to keep nerfing to a minimum if we can, because it's not much fun to have a favorite scroll and then suddenly find out, it doesn't do what you thought it did, or it's much worse than it used to be.
It certainly feels good to have a card get better. Scroll, not card.
Exactly. But it is an option we have to consider as well, nerfing.
Yeah.
And this, of course, is a luxury that traditional card games do not have, because they're printed. So once you've sent the prints out, you basically can't change it.
Yeah.
Then, of course, there's the option of doing more general rule changes as a balancing tool. But that's, I mean, we've been talking about, for example, maybe introducing some sort of penalty to reshuffling the deck. So something like you take 2 damage to all your idols every time you reshuffle. I'm not saying that's something we will do, but that would sort of penalize draw decks a little bit.
Yeah. Make Imperial resources better.
But that's a last resort. We'd like to keep as much of the gameplay as possible on the scrolls to have a game that's easier to explain and easier to understand and get into.
Okay.
So the main tool is adding scrolls or buffing or nerfing existing ones.
Are there any examples of when you've added a scroll to balance something that you can think of? Or has that not been required just yet?
No, I'm fairly certain we've done that. Well, memorials, I suppose, are a good example.
Oh, right.
Mono resource decks were significantly stronger than multi-resource decks.
Yeah.
So much so that it was considered impossible to play multi-resource decks. And then memorials were added as a way to balance that. And in the beginning, they weren't very strong because they were more expensive than they are now and had more health. So they were more of a wall that also happens to give you a resource.
Okay.
And then we've changed those over time by decreasing their health, but also making them cheaper, so that they're a more viable option for creating multi-resource decks. So that's a scroll that we've added for the specific purpose of balancing decks.
Yeah. And then at one point they drew you scrolls when they came
there was a brief time when they let you draw a scroll when they died.
Ah, right. Sorry, I got that wrong. We call it the Golden Age.
Yes. That was a slight mistake, I would say, but it was interesting. We learned a lot.
Yeah.
We learned never to do that. Yeah. I think they're fairly balanced as they are right now.
Yeah. I think they is incredibly balanced currently. We're trying to work out what the best deck is, and I think Blinky's set on mono order. I think mono order is the only finished one at the moment.
Mono order did win our internal office tournament as well.
But I feel like there's loads more opportunities that we haven't actually tried yet.
And
still,
and the mono order deck that won the tournament played heavily on the current meta. So, like a bunch of us, most of us actually, were playing mono growth decks, and this was a mono order deck tailored specifically to face mono growth decks with a lot of spiky things like that. So it won that tournament, but I can see myself, playing a mono energy deck with Thunder Surge against that in the later tournament and perhaps beating that deck.
Yeah. I like the meta at the moment. It's so it can change so quickly.
That it does. I mean, we've seen from the community side that what deck is the best one is considered the best one has changed a lot, even when we haven't patched the game.
Yeah.
So for a while, mono growth was the strongest, and then mono order, and then the growth order draw deck, and then suddenly comes the Kinfolk Elder deck. So it's sort of it's very interesting for us to see that, because that implies some a little bit that the optimal deck still hasn't been found, which is a good thing, I think.
I don't think it has. I think mono order is the best deck that's been found, but we still haven't found all the others yet. And we'll get there.
I have no doubt. And we'll keep adding scrolls, making sure you won't get there.
That's your goal.
Well,
if we find a best deck, then you've failed.
Well, if you found the best deck, then we add a couple of scrolls, which confuses the balance, and then the meta is interesting again. Because a static meta game is not particularly interesting, I think. Yeah,
true. I think I found for a while, before you added all the new energy scrolls a while ago, the Go decks were being really heavily used.
They were.
That's when I started to get a bit tired of it. Then you changed things, and I've been here since then.
Well, that's a good thing then.
Yep. The art team, they're next.
All right.
We can't leave anyone out. The art team and the coding team are both very heavily involved in the design of a game. And does that create any interesting dynamics in the design process? Like, are the design responsibilities evenly split between art and coding?
I would say so, yeah. That they're roughly evenly split. I mean, for the most part, there's no real owner of a scroll. So the scroll ideas get tossed around, they get altered, tested, balanced, altered again, and so on until something that we're happy with emerges.
Okay.
And sometimes this happening by us trying to fit existing artwork or fit scrolls to existing artwork, I should say. And sometimes this happens by us coming up with an idea and then the artists drawing artwork for that. And both our artists and the programmers are very interested in game design. And there's plenty of experience on both sides. So it only makes sense to us to sort of work together on that and collaborate.
Okay, that sounds really good, actually. Yeah, I wish I could draw or code, one of those two.
Well, I'm sure you can. It's just a matter of practice.
A new scroll coming out in a week's time called Stickman.
And I'm looking forward to it.
He cannot be hit by range attack as he is so thin.
That makes some sort of sense, I suppose.
He's still hit by lobber, but...
Yeah. Especially the goo lobber.
Yeah. No, I'm going crazy places now.
Okay.
Like, once he's hit by goo, he becomes Thick Man. And so suddenly be hit by ranged attacks.
That is not the best idea I've heard for a scroll so far. But keep working, and we'll get there.
I'm going to continue Stickman. That is my goal now. It might become more serious, but his name will always be the same.
It'll be awesome, I'm sure.
I'm going to go back to that immediately after this.
Okay.
And I will draw the art for it. Are there any fundamental differences in game design theory between the different members of the team? Is there anything that you guys have agreed to not fight about anymore? And just said, you know what, we'll just leave it as it is and just put it under the couch? Or does one person have the final say?
Well, in regards to having agreed to not fight about something, I mean, I'm sure that has happened. I can't actually think of an example of it. But yeah, it's probably happened in some way or other. As to whether one person has final say, I suppose if so, that would be Jacob. But I don't think I've ever heard him overrule the rest of us.
Yeah.
So he doesn't really use that a lot. I mean, I couldn't even say whether that's true or not. The fact that he has fun say. So there's naturally plenty of difference in the way we look at game design. I think that would happen in most any team. But we've been able, I think, to find compromises that everyone's happy with for the most part. So, and often if we're unsure about how to do something, we'll talk about it, wait for a bit, and then eventually realize that Carnalizer was right all along. He's got a very good eye for game design, I think.
Okay.
But given the fact that we have a lot of different opinions and different ways of thinking about game design, I'm actually slightly surprised we've been able to create a game that all of us are pretty happy with, that we think is fun.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, like, one person who's just sat there going, I still don't like the countdown system.
Well, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
I do think we're all pretty happy with the game.
That's good. I like the idea of there could potentially at some point be a dispute that has to be taken to Lord Master Jacob. And he has to lay down the law, but...
Well, the thing is, I mean, there's definitely been cases when we don't agree. That's bound to happen. But we tend to talk about those a lot. and eventually we'll come up with something that everyone's happy with. It's worked so far, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, that sounds very good. Oh, I like this question. How do you think the lack of a physical product helps or hurts you?
I think it's helpful, very helpful, in fact. Scrolls is designed from the ground up to use all the strengths of a digital platform. So the countdown, or keeping track of a unit's health over an entire game, those are things that would be difficult to do in a traditional tabletop game.
Yeah.
So you could do it using loads of counters or something like that.
But all the dice.
Yeah, I don't think it would be very practical.
No, you'd need a really big board, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, with the amount of units that Scrolls has, and the 5 adults, and it's just it's a lot of stuff to put on the board. And additionally, being able to change the game over time, so the nerfing and buffing we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
That's a luxury that physical products don't have. Mm-hmm. There's also the matter of producing and distributing a physical product. It takes a lot of time, which means feedback from players is way less immediate, which also in turn means you'll need a more rigorous and drawn-out test period. So using a digital project, or using the digital platform, I suppose, we're able to reach the community and get feedback from the community a lot faster.
Yeah, but unless you just change like one thing really quick.
Exactly. There are downsides to it, I suppose. One thing I can think of is that it becomes more rigid. So, for example, letting a player interrupt the game with an out-of-turn action. So, like a card that says play at any time. That becomes much harder to do in a nice way in a digital game.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I see benefits.
Yeah, I agree. I think overall it is a better way to do it. Plus, I think it really helps that once you buy your initial copy of Scrolls, you technically have all the Scrolls.
Yeah, well, in a sense, you have access to grinding your way to them or earning the gold to buy them, but you don't actually have them straight away.
Of course, but you don't have to spend any extra money if you don't want to.
Absolutely, and that's something I really like about it.
Yes, that's...
And with that said, I love traditional board games. I play them a lot, so there's definitely something to be said for that medium. But I think a digital platform is a good fit for Scrolls.
Yeah. Speaking of physical board games, I'm getting paid tomorrow, and I'm going to need a list of good board games. So, if you have any suggestions, send them to me later.
Okay.
You're changing the name resources to now say forces instead of that original pool. Is that true, or are we imagining that?
I'm not quite sure, to be honest. I mean, personally, I'm sorry. That's my phone. Personally, I don't think resources is such a great name for the concepts of growth, order, energy, and decay.
Yeah.
With that said, it's a useful term when talking about what you have on the side of your board. So, like spending 5 growth resource of the growth resource, that makes a lot of sense. So when talking about things like the entire collection of growth cards, or I'm not sure, the armies of growth, then calling growth a resource doesn't make too much sense to me.
Is that that's why it's been changed to factions, I guess?
Well, factions could be suitable, but I do think we might want to use that for the warring factions in our lore, which is related to the resources, but not quite the same thing. So for Order, we have the Empire, which is
Okay.
associated with Order, but it's not actually the same thing. So there could be Imperial units in other armies for multi-resource sticks, for example.
Oh, I like this.
So, but that means factions isn't really a name that we want to use as well either. I'm not sure if we'll stop saying resources. It does make sense, as I said. Forces is a term that I've been toying with. So, like, the force of order it could be what the Empire is aligned with, I suppose.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
But I'm not sure which way we'll go.
Kinfolk have joined the force of growth.
Well, you know, it sounds pretty good to me, but I'm not sure if it's quite there yet.
When you say the kinfolk have joined the resource of growth, it makes it sound as though they plant helmets in the ground, put some fertilizer on it, and a kinfolk pops out of it.
Well, you know, fertile soil and then draw scrolls. It's basically what happens.
That works. I kind of that right. So I wish I could do. I wish I could code, and I wish I could animate, because I'd animate a story where it's as though the scrolls are actually being used in a war. So I'll use the fertile soil to get me 6 wolves.
I'll grow 4 more scrolls here in the ground.
Yeah. This is useless. I'll throw it away, and 2 more will appear.
We have a couple of ideas of how the lore ties into the use of scrolls, but I don't want to get into too much depth on that, because I'm sure it's subject to change. And it's something that we're still working on.
I think the idea of sacrificing 1 scroll to get 2 makes a lot of sense, because you just cut it in half and you have 2. So that's all works.
Well, would they be 2 different scrolls though? I mean, if you cut a kinfolk brave in half, does he suddenly become a great wolf and a thunder surge?
And fertile soil. Yeah. Maybe you cut it in half and all the ink just fades off and returns as something else. I don't know.
And then it grows back into 2 new scrolls. There's things that we want to, find a relation to our lore with, and things where that doesn't feel necessary. So for sacrificing 1 scroll to get 2 new ones, that might not necessarily be something that we can tie in with the lore. But the fact that there are these mages, we call them callers currently, fighting or warring using these scrolls, that is something that needs to be in our lore in some way.
Yeah, okay. So I think this is the final question before we get on to Blinky's questions. What is it about scrolls that keeps you motivated to work on it?
Well, I'm a fan of other card games. So including Magic, Dominion, Ascension, Mage Knight. These are all deck building games. There's plenty of other card games that I enjoy as well. So the game itself is definitely one of the big factors for me. But perhaps more than that is the community is actually hugely stimulating. We've gotten some great feedback so far. And I do think it's helping make Scrolls a better game than it would otherwise have been. So keep it coming.
Yep. I think we could create an infinite loop here, because I get motivated to keep doing my stuff because of support I get from the community and from Mojang.
Well, that's excellent then.
So you keep supporting me, I'll keep supporting you.
Cool.
And now we're on to the Blinky questions. These are marked in the document in bright red. So
okay.
I think maybe we're stepping out of the serious territory here, but Blinky wants to know, have you got any jobs going?
Not right now that I know of. I mean, for Scrolls, I suppose the scale of the team will partly depend on how well the game does once we launch it. But Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
Do you think you might be able to hire Blinky to dress up as a Sister of the Fox at conferences?
Absolutely.
Yes!
That makes total sense to me.
Okay, I can't wait for that. I'm going to make that happen.
What have I done?
Yep. So, I'll make sure Blinky knows who to blame.
Okay.
Second Blinky question. Can you give us some money?
I am not in charge of the money.
Okay.
I'm afraid.
Can you steal us some money?
I'm not actually sure if I could. I don't think that would be such a good idea. I'd like to keep developing scrolls.
I think that's probably the best answer you could have given. Because now we're like, but we want you to keep developing scrolls too.
Excellent. Then.
And.
Okay.
Yep. The third question from Blinky: can we have our own panel at Minecon 2013?
I mean, that is absolutely an option, I guess. Last Minecon was there was a lot of community events, panels from interested community parties talking about Minecon. Sorry, about Minecraft, not about Minecon. That would be a weird conference.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I don't see why that shouldn't be true for Scrolls as well. But I'm not arranging Minecon, and I don't know when it will be or where it will be, so I don't want to give a definite yes to that question. But I don't see why not.
Okay, well, if you could drop a hint to Lydia.
Sure.
Wow. I just dropped magic cards everywhere. And on that note, I'm going to say great big massive thank you to you for coming to the interview.
And thank you.
Yep, you've been very busy in it. I'm pretty happy that I managed to catch you and get this all done. So,
Yeah,
I guess back to the rest of the show.